From the PlayStation VR2 to Atomic Heart and Hogwarts Legacy, February was an incredible month for video games. So without further ado, let's dive into the gaming news of February 2023.
Hogwarts Legacy is arguably the biggest launch of this month, and personally, I loved it, because I think the way they captured Hogwarts is so accurate to the lore and in particular the books. I mean, I've seen side-by-side comparisons of the book to the game, and for so many areas of Hogwarts, it is exactly the same, and it is incredible. They really captured the world perfectly, and I think that is the main reason why this game is such a success.
And if you take a look at the sales figures, you can really see that this has been one of the biggest video game launches of all time. I believe it's made just under $1 billion in revenue, and it sold about 12 million copies, and that puts it up there with games like Elden Ring and even Cyberpunk 2077. So it really has reached that upper echelon of video game releases, and it probably is the biggest one of this year.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to comparing games, you can really tell where this game's success has come from, because, I mean, for example, on Twitch, it had over 1 million live viewers at one time, which is the most ever for a single player game, which I think is partly due to the game being amazing, but also because of the anticipation thanks to many delays, and it's definitely become the best Harry Potter game of all time.
So in terms of the game itself, I really wasn't expecting anything revolutionary, and although it does take the structure of a traditional open world game, I think, as you said, that world that it does put you in is extremely faithful and immersive, and it really is that ties everything together. Just being in this world and living the life of a Hogwarts student is something that so many people have been looking forward to, and that's easily what's made it such a big success. I mean, I could go on for hours and hours about just how massive this game is. The scale of the open world, the characters, the engaging narrative, the huge amount of things to do, the variety of different spells you can cast, and of course, the beauty of the world itself. This game has already cemented itself as one of the greatest titles launching this year, and even with so many exciting games coming up, it's gonna be pretty hard to top this, but I guess we'll see. Another game that released this month was Soviet shooter Atomic Heart. I've gotten the chance to play about 3 hours of this, and so far, although it's completely off the wall, I am really enjoying it. Definitely reminds me of games like BioShock and Half-Life, where you're dropped into this sort of dystopian, futuristic world and just left to your own devices. And although this is supposed to be some kind of twisted future, everything in this game is absolutely breathtaking. And it also runs really well, which really was surprising, not just because of the graphics, but also because it's a modern video game release. I also really enjoyed the combat because of just how customizable it is, and also this elemental ability similar to those found in BioShock. A lot of the titles this game is taking inspiration from are some of my favorite video games of all time. Games like Half-Life, of course BioShock, and even Wolfenstein. And you can kind of see that with the alternate history route they've taken. So overall, I think it's an incredibly interesting premise for a game, and the cherry on top is that it's also fun to play.
Unfortunately, I'm yet to actually play the game, but from what I can tell, players seem to really like it. On the Steam store, it got 87% positive reviews, which as a whole is a great score to get. However, in terms of critics, they were a little bit harsher, with quite a few 60 to 70 out of 100 reviews, but as a whole, they were still quite positive, with mainstream reviewers giving it around 8 out of 10, such as IGN and PC Gamer. The positives are generally said to be the world building, the graphics, and the satisfying combat. However, some reviewers criticise the dialogue and the disjointed story, but overall, critics and players seem to like it. Another massive release for not just this month, but for the whole year is Sons of the Forest. We posted our first impressions video the other day, and I personally really enjoyed it. It seems to have taken what the first game made and just built on it in every way. The world is much bigger, you now have an AI companion, and the crafting system seems similar but just a bit more polished. And overall, it just seems bigger, better, and more visually stunning than ever.
So interestingly, although this did launch into early access, the Steam reviews have been really positive so far. Although I did notice something a bit strange over the last few days. Since it released, the review scores have actually dropped fairly considerably. I believe it debuted to about just over 90%, but now it's sitting at about 83. I had a look through the reviews and it does seem like people are still enjoying it, but they've noted a fairly lackluster story and an overall shortage of content. Although that is to be expected from an early access title, and hopefully through updates and patches, they can add a lot more in the future. Not only was this month absolutely massive for software releases, but we also saw the launch of the PlayStation VR2. This is of course the successor to Sony's original PSVR headset, and it's launching alongside a bunch of exciting titles. Most notably Horizon Call of the Mountain, Resident Evil Village, and Gran Turismo 7. I've had the opportunity to check out the first two, and although I'm only a few hours into each of them, I can say that I'm thoroughly enjoying this headset. It's not without a few flaws. I mean, that probably is to be expected considering the hardware that's in this headset, and of course it being sold at a consumer price. I did find that the sweet spot was considerably smaller than other headsets I've tried, but when you do find it, the visuals become incredibly sharp. The OLED panel looks incredible with all of the colours that it offers, and the extended field of view helps a great deal in immersing you in the world. What I've seen so far is incredibly impressive, so I just hope that Sony will continue to support this headset for many years to come.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to games, I mean, we posted our tier list video ranking the launch lineup, and as a whole, the games seem pretty good. There's been massive AAA titles such as Horizon Call of the Mountain, but we've also seen much smaller indie titles such as What the Bat and The Light Brigade. So even if the big developers kind of stop support for the headset, I think it's great to have those smaller indie games that can constantly be in the background and keep it afloat. On the topic of PlayStation, recently we had a State of Play, which released to some mixed opinions. The good parts are things like the new Resident Evil 4 gameplay trailers and Mercenaries mode, which people seem to really like the look of. They also showcased a few new PSVR titles, which did seem good, but they were definitely overshadowed by the negative reception to the new Suicide Squad game. People definitely showed appreciation for the graphics and the gameplay, but people did not like the live service elements of the game at all, such as a battle pass and also having to be online to play single player, which I think for many users, especially Steam Deck users, could be a massive deal breaker. And considering the game does let you play the full game in single player, it is understandable why people would want to be able to play it without an internet connection.